You stand in Istanbul, 1600. Fish smoke and wet rope burn your nose. This is medieval history in motion. Janissaries guard dynastic heirs at the palace. The Qadi's men sweep Galata tonight. This house is a brothel. 30 heartbeats until the knock on your door. The ledger in your sleeve lists names, rents, and a forged marriage for this house. If they find it, they seal the door, seize the coin, and drag you to the courthouse. One page decides who walks out alive. 1 hour earlier, a runner warned you. "Bostancı with a writ," he said, before midnight. You paid him 2 axes. You checked the rooms. 6 beds. The madam hid the women behind the screen. The stand-in husband failed to come. You sent for a fresh paper. The seal still smells warm. A black eunuch passed in silence. His sash carried the silk cord. You looked away. A missing husband will break your defense. The clerk was 26. His master waited at the courthouse for names, fines, and seized coin. He tracked which streets always produced husbands on command. He marked seals that smelled of new wax. He knew who sold them near the fish market. He also knew which houses were protected from real raids. Back to the lane. Boots stopped outside. A staff struck twice. The officer called the house name. The clerk lifted his board. The ink shone. He asked for the husband. The keeper had none. The keeper held a paper that said otherwise. If the seal failed, the fine and exile would follow. If the ledger appeared, prison would follow. The patrol watched the keeper's hands. You must choose before the door opens. The latch lifted. 3 men entered. The officer read the writ. Curfew, wine, prostitution. Fine, seizure. The clerk scanned the room. Stove, screen, sleeve. He had raided this lane for months. He knew who paid and who lied. The bostancı said nothing. He noted the lamps and the faces. He could close this house with one gesture. One witness will change everything. The clerk turned to the crowd. "Husband," he said. A stranger stepped forward. He carried a folded paper with a fresh seal. He knew the keeper's name, rent, and room count. He said he wed the keeper 4 weeks ago. No one in the house knew him. The clerk broke the seal. He read. The bostancı touched the silk cord. The officer nodded once. "Confirm," the clerk said. The stranger smiled. "Does the keeper step toward the husband or the stove?" You step toward the husband. You keep the ledger flat under your sleeve. The clerk watches your hands. The stranger offers his paper. The wax still smells warm. The officer reads the writ again. Curfew, wine, prostitution, fine, seizure. The clerk asks the wedding date. The stranger answers at once. 4 weeks ago, he lists 2 witnesses. He gives a street. He names a priest. The bostancı studies the seal. He nods once. The clerk notes a small fine for noise. He does not close the house. Your breath returns, but the room stays cold. The screen does not move. The seal's crest is not random. Minutes later, the patrol turns to the next door. The bostancı scratches a mark on your lintel. Not closed. Watched. The clerk tells you to present at the courthouse at noon. He wants the husband with you. He wants the paper again. He leaves the inked line on his board and steps outside. The crowd thins. The stranger does not move. He folds the paper and smiles. "Payment," he says. "Tonight." He taps your sleeve. He knows about the ledger. The madam stares from behind the screen. The room waits for your answer. One clerk keeps 2 books. The clerk was 26, and he worked by rules. In 1600, Qadis balanced Sharia with kanun and coin. Raids came in waves, fines filled chests. Brothels survived by papers that looked like marriages. Stand-in husbands came from taverns, docks, and guilds. Some knew the law. Some only knew the fee. Bostancı enforced the writs and marked doors. Eunuchs watched palace streets and listened for noise that reached the pavilions. The system punished shame in public and sold time in private. The list of houses for inspection was not a secret to everyone. The list changes with bribes and fear. 3 months earlier, Galata saw a purge. A Qadi lost his post after a fight between sailors and janissaries near a dockside house. After that, seals spread. A market grew around the fish stalls. Papers gained crests that promised safety. Clerks learned which crests passed fast. Husbands appeared on schedule. Some houses lived under fixed protection. Others kept moving. The stranger belonged to that market. His memory was too clean. His seal too fresh. His price would not be low. Back to the room. The stranger lowers his voice. "Noon," he says. "Bring the ledger, or tomorrow's raid closes the street." The madam grips the screen. You look at the stove. You look at his hand on the door. Do you pay him or follow him to the courthouse? You follow him to the courthouse at noon. Heat packs the hallway. Ink and sweat sting your nose. The clerk sits behind a low desk. He writes names without looking up. The stranger stands beside you. He keeps one hand on the folded paper. The officer waits by the door. A guard watches the stove where fines are sealed with wax. You keep the ledger flat under your sash. Your mouth is dry. You say the marriage date. The stranger repeats it. The clerk asks for witnesses. He writes both names. He asks for your trade. You say keeper. He nods once. The fee is not the point. The clerk asks to see the paper again. He checks the seal. He weighs it with his thumb. He adds a small fine for noise. He writes the hour of last night's raid. He says you can go when you pay. The stranger leans close. Ledger, he whispers. Now. You do not move. The officer shifts. The guard glances at your sash. The clerk raises his eyes for the first time. What ledger? He says. The stranger's smile thins. The room hears the word. One stamp opens any door. 3 years earlier, the registry changed its forms. Qadis kept Sharia. Qanun set fines and seizures. Brothels learned to hide behind papers that looked like marriages. Brokers appeared at the docks and fish stalls. They sold husbands by the hour. They learned the crests that passed. They paid scribes to keep lists of doors that cooperated. Some scribes kept a second list. It showed who bought seals, which patrols looked away, and which houses hosted foreign sailors. That list fed money and news upward. The clerk knew the brokers by smell and ink. Back to the desk. The stranger names his price, half today, half next week. He wants your ledger to match the registry. He says his seal will guard you all winter. He speaks like a man with a schedule. You ask who he serves. He says the registry. He does not say which scribe. The clerk pretends not to hear. He dips his pen. He writes your fine. He asks for the paper one more time. You pass it back. The ledger is worth more than fines. A black eunuch steps into the hall. 2 bostancı follow. The room falls quiet. He sets a folded firman on the desk. The clerk stands. He breaks the cord. He reads. His face hardens. The order names Galata. It orders seizure of forged marriages and any books of rooms and rents. Searches begin today. The officer locks the door from inside. The guard bars the window. The stranger's smile vanishes. Do you surrender the ledger or try to leave before the search starts? Back to the hall. The clerk folds the firman. Search begins, he says. The guard bars the window. The officer checks the door. The stranger steps close. Ledger, he whispers. Now. The black eunuch lifts a hand. He looks at the seal on the stranger's paper. Return it, he says. He calls the stranger by name. Broker. The room understands. The clerk sets out a second board. He will log seized books by street. One crest decides who pays and who speaks. Last winter, the registry changed again. The court kept Sharia. Kanun set fines and seizures. But the palace wanted more than coin. The harem's waqfs sent orders through the chief black eunuch. Bostancı widened their rounds. Brokers grew bolder. Papers did not only shield houses, they tagged compliant doors. They marked who fed the court steady news on sailors, janissaries, and guildmen. Raids refreshed the lists. The seal on the stranger's paper matched a waqf crest used at the harem gate. The seal was not protection, it was enrollment. Back to the table. The clerk reads the firman aloud. Seize forged marriages, seize books of rooms, rents, and visitors. He writes the hour, he writes your street. He asks for your ledger. The black eunuch does not raise his voice. Hand the book, he says. Your house stays open, with terms. The stranger nods. Weekly, he adds. Names, ships, coin. The officer watches your hands. The guard steps behind you. The stove crackles. One list can end a career. 3 years earlier, a janissary brawl near the docks cost a Qadi his post. Since then, lists mattered more than sermons. A house that named trouble early kept its door. A house that hid names lost it. Clerks learned which streets filled with foreign crews. Brokers learned which officers bought silence. The eunuch learned who tried to run 2 books, one for coin, one for truth. Your ledger held both, rents, room counts, and visitors tied to a captain with arrears. The clerk knew that captain's file. Back to the hall. The stranger reaches for your sash. You step aside. The clerk taps the board. Time, he says. He must log 50 doors by dusk. The eunuch moves closer. You keep the house, he repeats. You bring copies each week. You do not alter hours. His eyes stay on your sleeve. The officer opens a chest for seized books. The guard opens the stove lid to check for fire. Smoke lifts. A bargain now will bind all winter. The clerk closes the firman. He fixes you with a steady look. Choose, he says. Book for leniency or search and seizure. The stranger smiles again. He knows the price. The eunuch extends his hand. The guard's fingers brush your sleeve. Do you place the ledger into the eunuch's hand or the fire? Back to the hall. Heat presses your face. Smoke lifts from the stove. The eunuch's hand waits. The guard's fingers still touch your sleeve. The clerk watches the edge of the book. The stranger smiles without teeth. Your mouth is dry. You feel the grain of the cover. You feel the bite of the thread. You choose. One move binds the winner. You place the ledger into the eunuch's palm. The paper slides. His fingers close. The room exhales once. The guard steps back. The officer lowers his chin. The stranger's smile returns. You hear the clerk's pen scratch. He writes one word above your street. Leniency. He stamps the fine. Wax hisses. The seal cools. The chest stands open for seized books. Your book does not go inside. It stays in the eunuch's hand. The price now becomes time. He does not speak yet. He turns the first page with care. His ring clicks on the board. He scans dates. He scans room counts. He slows at the lines with ships. You hear your own breath. The clerk watches the page, not you. The officer counts coins from the last case. The guard checks the bar on the window. The stranger tilts his head toward your sash. He wants the week's money. You do not look at him. A name will cut deeper than a fine. The eunuch turns another page. The thread creaks. He taps a line. He turns the book so the clerk can see. The clerk leans forward. His face shows nothing. He writes the hour again. He notes copies weekly. He notes husband on file. He notes noise fine paid. He keeps his voice flat. You keep the house, he says. You keep the hours. The officer closes the chest. The lid thuds. The room waits for the page number. You feel sweat at your back. The stove pops. Ash drifts. The stranger clears his throat. Payment, he whispers. He does not push. He knows the order of things. The eunuch keeps turning pages. He stops near the end. The paper edge scrapes. He reads a column of visitors. He rests his finger on one name. He does not lift it. He does not blink. The guard notices and straightens. One witness will not leave this room. The clerk sets down his pen. He reaches for the ledger again, but the eunuch does not release it. He looks at you now. He looks at the stranger. He looks back at the name. The officer's hand settles on the doorbar. The hallway grows quiet. You hear voices fade outside. The eunuch says one word. Explain. He taps the name once. Whose name did he find? The eunuch read the name aloud. Captain Hassan, ferry guard at Üsküdar. The clerk did not move. He knew the file. Arrears. Fights near the docks. A reprimand last spring. The officer's eyes tightened. The stranger looked at the floor. The eunuch closed the book with care. He visits on Fridays, he said. You will list his hours. You will list his men. You will list which ships they drink with. The clerk picked up his pen. He wrote the name on a separate slip. He sanded the ink. He blew once. Silence now buys a winter. 3 months later, the board showed fewer raids on your lane. The lintel bore a fresh mark. Watched, not closed. The clerk logged your weekly copies. He stamped small fines for noise and curfew. He paid special notice to Friday entries. The stranger appeared every Monday for coin. He carried new seals when the old ones turned suspect. He never asked for the ledger again. The eunuch collected the slips in a file marked Üsküdar. The officer learned to pause at your door, then pass. The house worked. The book grew. A page number decides a posting. 6 months later, Captain Hassan lost his command. The registry wrote that he took debt from sailors. The bostancı added that he ignored curfew. The clerk attached your slips. The eunuch sent the file through the palace gate. A new captain took the ferry post. He did not visit your street. Your fines dropped. Your mark stayed on the lintel. The stranger shifted to other lanes. He found fresh houses to enroll. The clerk kept both books, one for penalties, one for names. The court spoke of order. The docks stayed loud on Fridays. Back to the hall. The chest still held seized books. Your ledger never touched it. The clerk filed your copies. The eunuch stored the originals. The officer checked the bar and left. The room emptied fast. Only ash and wax stayed on the table. The stranger bowed once and went to the fish market. The day returned to heat and noise. The system did not change. It only wrote neater lines. One witness had changed everything. And you stood in the doorway. You smelled the wax and smoke. You felt the wood splinters under your palm. You signed the fine. You kept the hours. You learned to write names without shaking. Power did not close your door. It counted it. If you want the next door opened, stay with this channel and step inside the next story.